Hello and welcome to another edition of Personal Health and Fitness. I'm your host, Chad Marshak. I have a great program for you today. It's called Lower Body Exercises for Pitchers, and I have my good friend Eric Jokisch. Eric,
Chad, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming aboard. We're going to have a good time today. We're going to share with you a lot of different exercises today pertaining to how to work your lower body. So if you're a pitcher, this program's for you. During the off season, I know, Eric, we've worked, I think this is our 5th off season, and we typically set specific goals before we begin things, usually sometime through mid-October. And I think that's an important thing for every young pitcher to consider. They need to think about, well, what do I want to achieve? I know in 5 months my, say, high school or grade school baseball season is going to start, and I've got to think about what I want to accomplish for my next season. What are some of the things that kind of go through your mind where you're kind of assessing where you are and where you want to go?
Yeah, well, I think every year I start with how I feel physically, and then by taking what felt weak or what I felt like could be improved on, that's what I kind of want to focus on the next year, you know, because I'm always thinking about how to improve, how to get better. So usually for me that comes with being more explosive, more lower body strength, to try to take stress off of my arm as a pitcher and put more work into the bigger, stronger muscles like the legs and your core.
Mm-hmm. And I know that a lot of people think that when they throw a baseball, or a lot of parents I know that I've talked to over the years, they're always concerned about the shoulder. A lot of young athletes concerned about the shoulder. But so much to pitching really has nothing to do with the shoulder. It's everything from the ground up, from the hips to the core, you know, to the lower body, legs, hamstrings. Not that the shoulder doesn't work, but the shoulder really has very little to do with that acceleration, getting more velocity. You know, everybody wants to throw harder, faster, etc. But share with me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, for us as pitchers, like, pitching isn't exactly just throwing with the arm. It's all the arm's a reaction to what everything else is doing. So if you can get your legs and your core and your hips working the right way, the arm will be along for the ride, and that's the way we want it, because when the arm isn't doing too much, isn't taking all the stress of the throw, you'll be more healthy over the long term. Mm-hmm. So it's big to focus on the other things because you want the arm to just be a reaction to the rest of your body.
Mm-hmm. That's a good way to look at it. That's a good way to look at it. We've got 10 exercises we're going to share with people today. Warming up is really important. We do a pretty extensive warm-up, I know. We're just going to share a couple of real basic warm-up drills that we typically do, since we're focusing more on the lower body, trying to integrate the hips with the upper extremities. So we're going to start off with just a hip activation drill. Now this is a basic drill to turn on the glutes. You know, a lot of people, they spend so much time warming up that they're beat to heck before they get started. I'm a big believer in stimulating, not annihilating the body before you actually begin an exercise program. So we want to turn on the hips. So we're going to start with hip activation. So we've got 3 exercises. Eric's going to demonstrate this. One of the things you want to be mindful of when you're doing the hip activation is make sure that you keep the lower back flat. So he's going to start off with a leg kickback. So the leg's going to come up towards the ceiling, the foot's going to come up towards the ceiling. And really we're just trying to activate the gluteal muscles, turn the glutes on. So good rule of thumb, not to do too many reps, say 6 reps of each of these 3 exercises. So you're going to do 6 reps on each side. So the glutes are activating, the hamstrings are activating, his paraspinal muscles are activating. He's going through hip extension, so his hip flexors are lengthening as well. He's engaging his core muscles as well. So the next exercise he's going to do, you can do one of 2 things. You can either do the straight leg hip abduction, and if you're going to do that, let's go ahead and raise that hip up. So good idea to place like a pillow or some type of a pad or towel beneath the knee, and now you're going to lift that leg up. The goal is not to see how high you can lift your foot off the ground. The goal is barely to lift the foot off the ground, because we want to turn on these external hip rotators and disinvolve the lumbar spine. A lot of people, when they want to use their hips, they want to get a lot of rotation in their lower back, and that's not what the goal of this particular exercise is. We want to turn on those hips, get those hips rolling. Okay, and then we'll finish off with a fire hydrant. The fire hydrant, just think of what a dog does to a fire hydrant, and that's what you're going to do. So again, keep that lower back flat. Just envision if you had a cup of water here on the lower back and you don't want to spill that water. It's a good way to think about maintaining that proper spinal alignment in the lower back so that the hip rotators, glute medius, glute minimus, piriformis turn on and activate and do their job. So you're going to do 6 reps of each of these 3 exercises. That's good, Eric. Go ahead and stand up. So again, we do a lot of different warm-up drills, usually about 6 to 8, but because we don't have a lot of time today, I just want to give you a couple of interesting ones that you could do on your own. Again, this is more for anybody that's doing lower body exercises, but it's more specifically, again, geared for pitchers. So we're going to do the star matrix next. The star matrix pattern is a 3D pattern, 3 dimensions, all 3 planes of motion to prep his entire body. So we're going to get spinal rotation, we're going to get his hip flexors involved, more of a lengthening effect in the abdominal muscles when he goes forward. So you can see he's raising the opposite arm in unison with the leg. Now he's reaching over, involving his lats, getting his hips involved. Now he's going to do a transverse plane rotation with the dumbbells. Eric, do your last cycle facing the wall there. So good rule of thumb, use a very light load, 2, 3, 4, 5 pounds. Most times we're going to use 3 or 5 pound dumbbells on this. And we're going to do about 3 to 5 cycles through. So this is his 3rd cycle. That's great, that's enough, good. So again, that's going to lengthen the abdominal muscles, especially when he goes forward and he reaches back. He's going to get a big, his hip flexors are going to have to extend. He's going to get a bottom up, lengthening effect through his abdominals. If you think about where a pitcher ends up, where he gets in this stride position a lot, it's a good way to prepare your body for that particular movement action. Okay, next we're going to go into some banded exercises for his hips. Hips are so important for throwing athletes, making sure the hip rotators are nice and strong. So we're going to do a banded monster walk next. So we take a not very heavy band here particularly, and you're going to step on the band, and you're going to move laterally. And the goal on this particular exercise is not to bring your feet too close together. So this is kind of more or less a prehab type movement because the hip rotators help to control the action of the femur. So when you're striding out and you're stepping, you want to be able to plant without the knee caving in. So you want to be able to absorb those forces successfully. He's giving you another view. The frontal plane view, if you look at his feet don't come too close together. He's getting a nice big stride. Typically we'll do this for time, say 30 to 45 seconds. The other big thing that's working here is core muscles are having to work really hard to help stabilize his pelvis when he's moving. And that's the banded monster walk. You may have seen us demonstrate this before, like loop tubing. You can certainly use loop tubing. I like the bands, though a little bit more advanced, again, for somebody that wants a little bit more stress on the hip rotators. Okay, another really good thing to consider for throwing athletes, we do a fair amount of plyos, but we don't do them all season long. Now my thoughts on any type of plyometric training, people think you just have to jump on a box. Well, you can do a lot of ground-based jumping too, jumping either onto a box or off of a box. A lot of coaches with their athletes think that's the only way to do plyometric exercises, but we like to do different bounding type patterns where he's moving in the frontal plane laterally, just like he's throwing off of a mound, or we'll do from the floor up. We'll demonstrate that, a ground-based from the floor where he's kneeling onto his feet, but we're going to demonstrate the lateral bounds next. So let's just do 3 reps to each side. One thing you want to consider about plyometrics is that you're not going to do, you may do multiple sets, say 3 to 5 sets of lateral bounds, but you're only going to do 2 or 3 reps. So this is a lateral bound where he's trying to really get explosive, be explosive, moving from side to side. Just relax for a second. Say 2, 3 reps to each side. You want to consider your rest intervals. So good rule of thumb for most individuals is a 3 to 1 rest to work ratio. That means that if it took him 10 seconds to do those 3 explosive jumps, he's going to rest 3 times that amount, or 30 seconds. So if you simply do the math, it's pretty easy. Okay, let's go side to side now. So again, you're going to load up, pick one foot up off the ground. You want to try to stick that landing so you train your decelerators. That's 0 for 2, 1 for 3. Good. big giant stride, and oh, timber. And that's it, good. So shoe considerations. These shoes are probably not the best because I forgot to tell you. So we're going to do some of these plyometric drills side to side. So you want a flatter surface if you're doing a flatter shoe surface if you're doing any type of jumping. You're not going to want to do a lateral bound or any type of, most plyometric drills are going to be done with a flatter shoe. A running shoe is not a particularly good shoe to do any type of a plyometric exercise, so you want to consider that too. Okay, so we're going to demonstrate a kneeling explosive movement off the ground. Another plyometric drill that we use during Eric's off season. So this one's a little bit harder. It's a little bit more advanced. So you're going to start in a kneeling position. So he's going to do 3 jumps from his knees, and he's going to try to stick his landing. So use your upper body, and you want a nice soft landing. So you want to really use your arms. Swing those arms and get up. Let's do it from behind now. Go ahead and turn around. So you get an idea of what his hips look like. He's using his arms. He's loading his arms. He's sticking his landing. Okay, relax. Again, 2-3 reps of something like this, and then you're going to take whatever length of time it takes him to do that, multiply it times 3, and that's your rest interval, 3 to 5 sets. We actually increase the volume over time. Say the course of, if I'm working with Eric for 4 months during the off season, and we're starting plyos, say 10 weeks out, I'm not going to start him with doing 60 to 80 jumps. We may start at 30 to 40 jumps and work our way up over the course of what time we have left. Maybe we'll add 5 to 10 jumps extra a week. So the volume needs to be progressively overloaded so he doesn't overtrain, too early and have an injury that pops up. So you want to make sure that you consider that. Okay, so those are a couple of very basic plyometric drills. Now we're going to talk about doing what I call a core exercise, and we're going to do some banded box squats. So we've talked about, if you've watched a couple of programs ago, I did a program using accommodating resistance for the upper body, doing a barbell bench press. So if you notice here, we have a barbell loaded up with 135 pounds, and we have about, these are 25 to 50 pound bands attached to the bar. We've got a box set up on the ground. These are called, again, banded box squats. Maybe you've watched somebody perform a box squat but without bands. So the bands provide additional resistance. So as you go down on the box, the weight's actually going to deload, just the opposite of a regular bar. And as you stand up, typically the weight becomes lighter, or the load becomes lighter as you fully extend your knees. This is just the opposite. It actually becomes harder with the bands at the top of the movement. So we're trying to beat the strength curve, and this is just a great exercise for working on explosiveness. So you want to consider, typically, most athletes should use a load between 40 and 60% of their 1 repetition max. So that means that if you can squat 300 pounds to full depth, where you get down to 90 degrees of knee flexion and stand up, you're going to cut that in half typically. So 50% of that would be about 150 pounds, and then you can add anywhere between 25 and 50 pounds of resistance. Your body's really not going to respond if you're working on power if the weight's too hard, because you want maximal speed, maximal bar velocity when you're doing an exercise like this, because we want to work on the fast twitch muscle fibers. So Eric's going to demonstrate the banded box squat and the technique involved. The other rule of thumb or thing you want to consider is that the height of the box. Go ahead and just have a seat, Eric, before you start. General rule of thumb is that the hips should be, and the thigh should be parallel to the ground. So you want to make sure that you find a box and build it up. We have to, this is about a 15.5-inch span from the ground to the top. And this is going to allow him to, again, fully lengthen his hamstrings, fully turn on his gluteal muscles so he gets the most out of the exercise. All right, Eric, you ready? So let's go ahead and do 2 reps. So let's look at the technique first. So he's got to get himself set. Now, he's got a fairly wide stance. You don't want too narrow of a stance. He's going to want to make sure that he keeps those knees out, and then he's going to explode up. Down and fast as he can up. Okay, go ahead and rack it. Now, could he do a lot more than that in terms of repetitions? Absolutely. But that's going to, again, defeat the purpose of the exercise because his bar speed is going to actually go down after approximately 2 repetitions. So we want maximal velocity. So we'll do, say, 8 to 10 repetitions with this weight, and our rest intervals are anywhere between 40 and 45 seconds. That will give him enough time to fully recover where he can, again, have maximal bar velocity. We usually do some testing at the beginning of the season or the off season in terms of training, and then we gradually find a reference point in terms of where to start, and then we usually add 5 to 10 pounds each week when we do banded barbell box squats. So I think he started around 145 pounds in weight, and then we are at the tail end of our training in terms of the off-season training program, and I think we ended last week around 215 pounds with the band. So we had about a 50, 60 pound bump in weight, but again, it took roughly 4 months to get there. All right, let's do 2 more reps with this just to give people an idea. Feet are nice and wide, so drive those knees out, sit down, and then explode up. Good. Explode up, boom, and then great. Any type of a box squat's a great way for a beginner to learn how to sit back using their hips, their glutes, their hamstrings properly. And that is the banded barbell box squat. Great exercise. Okay, another example of using bands for, again, we're doing exercises for pitchers, hamstring strength. So we're going to do a banded RDL. RDL just stands for Romanian deadlift. So you're going to take a band, and again, there are different strengths of bands, and you're going to put it around your neck, stand on it, and you're going to bend over and drive your hips forward. So if you've done dumbbell Romanian deadlifts or you've done a barbell Romanian deadlift, a little bit different. The difference is that the forces are greatest when Eric is standing all the way up. Go ahead and turn to the side now. So in baseball, you have to decelerate trunk flexion when your your lead leg comes forward. So when you flex your spine, you get out here, you come forward, you're flexing your spine. These hamstrings have to decelerate that trunk flexion to slow that down. And the glutes really have to turn on as well. So this is training that posterior chain to do exactly that. So we'll do anywhere between, usually anywhere between 3 and 5 sets of 8 to 12 repetitions, depending on the band we're using. And that's a banded RDL. Great exercise. Again, different band strengths are available, and you just have to, again, figure out where you're starting from and then progress up in terms of load. How do you feel?
Good.
Yeah, no big deal for you, huh? All right, what do we got left on our list? We've got airplanes, we've got lateral box step-ups, and some one-leg hip thrusters. So the airplane exercise is a very challenging exercise. You don't want to do this, do you?
I don't.
You don't.
I'll embarrass myself.
You'll be fine. So this is a good exercise, again, to train balance, work the hamstrings in the frontal plane, all right, and get thoracic movement through his spine. So go ahead and assume the position. So you're going to balance on one leg. This is the starting, like he's flying. He's in an airplane, folks. So now he's going to go down and try to touch that foot and maintain his balance. So you want to come back to what I call home base, come back to the starting point, relax, reach down towards the ground, and then come up. So his hips and his hamstrings are really working hard to stabilize his body. Go ahead and turn to the side now. Let's do left leg now. So you'll do maybe 3 to 5 touches with each foot, would be 1 set. And don't worry if you drop this leg down, you have to touch the floor and regain your balance, but it's a good stability exercise that's going to work those internal and external hip rotators, the glutes and the hamstrings. That's good, Eric, good. That's a tough exercise, isn't it?
That's hard.
That's hard. You did fine. But anywhere between usually 2-3 sets of that, of roughly 3 reps with each hand on each leg. Resting anywhere between 60 and 90 seconds is a good way to stress out those hamstrings and hips. We do some specific stepping patterns too sometimes in our programming, using the glutes, making the hip rotators work. And this is called a Bandit Box Step Up. Let's come to this side, Eric. So you're going to place a band around the bottom of the foot. You're going to step on it. This is a 12-inch box. A 12-inch box is just about right for this. So he's going to stand up on the box and drive one knee up. And think about, what does the pitcher have to do when they come up? They have to load that hip, all right? So they have to balance and stabilize, but the resistance here is going to make him work that much harder. Plus he's taking a little step, he's going into external rotation, then he's doing a knee drive, so he's going into hip flexion. The abdominals have to load a lot more. And you'll do anywhere between, usually we'll do 8 to 10 reps depending on the band strength. And if you want to hold that position a little bit longer, say for a 3 to 5 count, it's going to be even more of a balance challenge. Are those easy or hard?
They're getting harder as I go.
Okay. Okay, that's good, Eric. Good. But again, a great exercise to work those hip rotators, which are going to give you more stability and balance when you're having to go through your mechanics on the mound. Do you ever fall off on any pitches? I mean, is that rare? I know you're a starting pitcher.
As you tire a
Yeah.
little bit, your mechanics will kind of fall apart, and coaches notice that, you notice that, but it's your job to rely on this training that we do here to rebalance, get yourself back in line, and keep pitching as well as you can. But by doing these exercises and all this, it allows you to be stronger and better as the
deeper in the game
goes on. Yeah. So my goal is to be able to start a game and finish a game every time I pitch, and without this kind of training, I wouldn't be able to do that.
If you have questions about what we do here at Body Symmetry, feel free to give us a call. Definitely check out our website at bodysymmetry.com. I know that we have high hopes for you, Eric.
Thank you. I appreciate
Chicago Cubs look like they're going to be pretty tough this
Should be
year.
a good year.
They're full, and you head down to Arizona next week for spring training.
Yep.
Part of the 40-man roster, and
Yes, sir.
we're all pulling for you. So,
Thanks, Chad. I appreciate it.
appreciate it, buddy.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep. Thanks again for joining me on another edition of Personal Health and Fitness. Until next time, I'm your host, Chad Marshak.